We're on our fourth lesson about Finnish sniper, Simo. Sorry, I didn't have his last name in front of me. Simo Haya. So one of the quirks of this gentleman, they had scopes at the time, but he didn't like to use them. He preferred using iron sights, which are just the metal normal sights that come on the rifle. The reason he preferred these, now remember, he was making long distance shots, and so most people would think that would be a lot easier with a scope. But he preferred the iron sights. Several reasons for this included, one, he was harder to pick out in a crowd of soldiers because typically the enemy would focus on snipers, just like they focus on the guys that run the machine guns. Because remember, the goal is to minimize their casualties and to maximize yours. The second reason that he preferred these iron sights was that they didn't cloud up in the cold weather. We're going to talk about just how cold it was in another video. Sometimes when we're looking at life and we're trying to carve out the optimal path, it's easy to get short-sighted. It's easy to get short-sighted. We have to take the long-distance view. We want to optimize over the biggest time frames and the largest breadth of situations. This is actually quite a mystery that I'm going to explain to you more over time. God is optimized for eternity, and there are costs to that. If you want to be the best in every situation, if you want to be the best across all situations, you can't be the best in each individual situation. This is quite a mystery, but it's the answer to so many gospel questions. If you want to be the best across all situations, you cannot be the best within each situation. This is actually a major reason that we are so clueless in identifying examples of greater holiness. Because we see what we identify as faults, which are actually costs of global optimization. Now, since we're here, and I already gave you a little foundation for this, I'll just keep going on this idea for a minute. And maybe this will be a nice preview for whenever it is I get around to explaining the bigger picture with this. Let's suppose that you and a friend decided that you were going to get one of these stock market trading accounts where it's real data, but fake money. It's just for pretend, right? And they have these out there that you can do. And let's say that day after day, your friend is making way more fake money than you on his trades on the stock market. Your strategy, though, you've done the homework on, and you have every reason to believe that in the long run, you will outperform your friend. Well, your friend's chiding you the whole time and giving you a hard time, and he's making more money day by day, and then the days turn into weeks. And maybe if you do it for long enough, the weeks turn into months. And then, out of seemingly nowhere, something happens where his strategy causes him to lose all of the money that he's made. And now, all of a sudden, you have way more money than he did. You chose to optimize over a longer time period. He chose to optimize over a shorter time period. If you look at the score in the short term, he's going to win. But you're going to win in the long term. And maybe there's another person who's optimized for an even longer time period. And there's another person, and we could just keep going on. God is optimized for all of time. There are dimensions of this that have to do with specific situations. There are things that God cannot do because it would be suboptimal across the domain of where he has to be optimal. Those are not faults. Those are the very definition of holiness. Maybe that just spins up your mind too much, so I apologize. If that was confusing, just forget it. Let's do the Men in Black thing. I have a pen. Okay? But if not, then that's a good taste of things to come. I'll explain it to you more thoroughly later. Okay, so back to the example here. Maybe if you're in sniper school and you're going to go to a cold weather region, maybe they say they're handing out scopes and you say, this is great. I can hit things from way further away with this scope than I can with the iron sights, and it's more accurate. But someone wiser than you is going to say, oh, you know what? This thing's going to get clouded up, and I'd rather take the hit in long-range accuracy and still be able to see the target. And that person is going to be a more effective sniper than you. Let's read some scriptures and maybe we can get some real-world applications out of this. Ether 3:5. This is when the brother of Jared makes the stones and takes them to the Lord, and he says, Behold, O Lord, thou canst do this. We know that thou art able to show forth great power, which looks small unto the understanding of men. Why would he say that? You might not know this yet, but when you pray and you're trying to secure blessings from God, you can't change him. He is going to be the same tomorrow as he is today, and it's the same as he was yesterday. But how he works is he operates by a set of laws. And so when you pray, if you're trying to secure things, you're trying to get results, what you have to do is bring to him the inputs to the equations that are going to generate the outputs that you desire. I hesitate to use this, but it's the example that popped into my head. Satan knows this, and that's why in the book of Job, he goes to the Lord and he says, essentially, there isn't anybody who actually believes in you, and God says, what about my servant Job? And Satan says, well, he only loves you because you're so nice to him. I'm obviously paraphrasing here. And if he were subject to the terrors of mortality, the afflictions that are sprinkled across everyone, he basically says, well, you've taken it easy on him. Of course he loves you. He's crazy successful. He's wise. He's got a family. He's got riches. He's got friends. Take away all these things and he'll curse you just the same as all these evil people. He challenged God's justice. And so the Lord says, okay, prove it. If you want to get a reaction out of God, you need to know the laws that he works by, and you need to take that to him. Most of the time, this is going to include you paying a price and sacrifice to change the conditions of the equation. Sometimes you can go to him and try to make a point, and he'll accept that point. Most of the times, your argument is going to include your unmerited suffering. And this is a great mystery. I delve into it quite a bit in the book, Seek Ye This Jesus. There's a chapter on intercession, at least, that you'll find useful for this topic. And I'll say a lot more about this later. But getting back to our example here, the reason he says this in his prayer, we know that thou art able to show forth great power, which looks small unto the understanding of men. He is encouraging the Lord in an aspect of his character that he, the brother Jared, knows a lot about. He says, in effect, we worthless humans have no idea what is valuable. But you do, and you delight to show us what has greater value. That's what he's saying here. That's the mystery behind his words. That's why this key opened the lock. Little things can be very big things. And when you know, because you've opened yourself to the Lord teaching you, when you know what has real value, and you know the things that differ so much from the way that the world sees them, You can hold those up to the Lord and miracles happen, because he delights to show us the things that have greater value, because his purpose is for us to have greater joy. And joy comes from value. And so the only two ways to have greater joy are, one, to obtain things that give greater joy. And that things is very broadly used. Experiences, people, knowledge, all of it. Two, to more accurately understand the value that things have. Again, broadly defined, the word things. So maybe something you have has tremendous value and you have no idea. And you need a set of experiences to teach you that value. That's the story of The Alchemist, this very popular novel that is a good read if you haven't read it. It's a very powerful book. Powerful message. Well written. Those are the only two ways to increase in your joy. And so God delights to give you things that have high value, but that will only do any good inasmuch as you recognize the value. As the scripture says, what good is it to give a man a gift if he doesn't see it as a gift, if he doesn't value it? If anything, it just condemns you, because God has an expectation. If you aren't grateful for good things, that lack of gratitude will be replaced with sorrow and guilt and regret when you receive greater knowledge of what it was worth. All right. So what does this have to do with the scope and iron sights? He knew the value of what other people took for granted. He didn't take the scope. It was better under certain conditions, but he knew where he was going and what the weather would be like. There's a deeper message here. He was finished. He knew what it was like to shoot in cold weather. Okay? He was going to be fighting in the environment he was familiar with. If you don't live a Christian life, you're not going to have any idea of what is valuable in heaven. This life is designed to teach us what's valuable in heaven and give us the opportunity to exercise faith to maximize that value. Moving on to Alma 37:6, let's read this. Now you may suppose that this is foolishness in me, but behold, I say unto you, that by small and simple things are great things brought to pass, and small means in many instances doth confound the wise. Don't make the mistake of assuming that things that you deem as unimportant or small are actually unimportant or small. We really need to approach the point where we treat everything with great gravity until we're given reason to do otherwise. One of the properties of a person with great faith is that they can summon this energy and this commitment and this dedication on what seems like the smallest long shot kind of opportunity that ever was. Because they have the willingness to assume that things are important until proven otherwise, they end up chaining together a stream of choices that no normal person would ever approach. And in aggregate, the results are outstanding. They are so different. It's not just that a person that believes this does one thing differently. They live their entire lives differently. You know, a person with faith, when they have a split second to have a brief conversation with a stranger, they're not thinking small. They're thinking big. They're thinking about this person's entire eternity and how it could come down to this very moment. And it's like this with everything, with job opportunities, with interactions with family and friends, with picking up a piece of trash off the ground. You know, you're walking through the parking lot at the grocery store and you see a nail, and you cascade this into big thinking of, this is going to pop somebody's tire. They're going to have all-wheel drive. That's $1,000. You know, not on my watch. I'm going to pick this up and put it in the trash. And it seems like such a little thing. In this case, it literally is a little thing. It's a little nail. It can ruin somebody's life. And on the flip side, it can change someone's eternity for the better. You have to think big, and you have to know the difference. And you have to know when something that seems less good is actually more good, because you're looking at the big picture and factoring in different circumstances than normal people would. And you're choosing to stick with the iron sights instead of the scope, because you know what it's worth. You know what you need it for, and you can see these consequences.